For some, golf might be a leisure activity. For others, it's all about the competition. One thing's for sure, it's a massive industry that generates more than $68 billion a year in the United States. I'll talk with World Golf Foundation CEO Steve Mona about the sport's impact in Florida, next on Metro Center Outlook. Hello everyone, welcome to Metro Center Outlook. I'm Diane Trees, Director of the UCF Metro Center and your host for Metro Center Outlook. With more than 30 years experience in the golf industry, Steve Mona, CEO of the World Golf Foundation, knows firsthand about the economic impact of golf. In fact, golf facilities alone are a $4 billion a year industry in Florida, equal to the impact of all other major sports in the state combined. Steve joins me today to talk about golf as an economic driver, as well as its community benefits. But first, let's learn about what local youth are gaining by being active.
It's no secret, especially in our country, that, lack of fitness, especially for children, is becoming an epidemic. And I think it's really important that, early on kids are taught, how to take care of themselves. There are kids who may not be the most athletic or the most physical and find themselves having a really good time on the walls.
Parents want their kids to be more active now. Surfing is basically every type of exercise you can think of. You work your core, your legs, your arms. It's cardio because you're constantly paddling. We get kids that come out here that are football stars, basketball stars, and they get the jello arms after a session with us.
I think I'm going to be in better shape than I was of all time after this week. Seriously, I have bigger muscles than I've ever had in my entire life before.
First rule is definitely have fun. My second rule is no electronics. You're here to surf, meet new friends, have an awesome time.
The nice thing about climbing is that it's fun. It's an activity that people enjoy doing. The fitness aspect is a byproduct of that. You don't have to be good at it to enjoy it or to get some benefit out of it. It's not like a lot of other sort of organized sorts of sports. You can really approach this if you've never climbed in your life and get something out of it within the first half hour of climbing.
I've had Marines that do fitness training through the military that come out here and get whomped. They get whipped by this sport. It's like pretty much the best sport you could think of. You're in the water, you're working out, you don't even know it because you're having so much fun.
And the reward that you see on somebody's face is really empowering for them and their parents and for us working here.
I've had every kid here. Like I said, I've had the football star to one of our girls who had a prosthetic leg that was up and shredding. There's no one who cannot surf. Some people it's harder, some people it's easier, but everybody gets up and rips.
I mean, it's part of the reason why we love to have youth people climbing at our facility is that they realize that this is something special, something special inside of them that they can do, and it's really nice to see that in a young person's face.
Now we're joined by Steve Mona, CEO of the World Golf Foundation. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be on.
You've been involved with the golf industry for some 30 years. What originally drew you to the sport?
Well, I had this grand design that I was going to play the game for a living, and then I quickly found out that that was not going to come true. And I thought then the only other option would be to become a club pro, and I wasn't good enough even to be able to do that. But then, because I was a sports writer growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area and I covered golf because I played the game, I became familiar with an organization called the Northern California Golf Association, which sponsored all the major amateur tournaments in the area. And I found out, lo and behold, that they actually had jobs there. And I made my interest known as I was covering those events for a number of years. And then, as luck would have it, right about the time I graduated college, they had a job open on the staff. And that was in September of 1980. And here I am 33 years later.
So you're actually pursuing a dream that you had in a little bit different way. Talk a little bit about your role as the CEO of the World Golf Foundation and also about the mission for the organization.
Sure. Well, the mission of the organization is to bring the industry together to collaborate on initiatives that no one entity could take on by itself. So by our nature, we take on the broadest, most complex, toughest issues confronting the game. And that was in 1993 when we were founded. Our first initiative was launched in 1997. That's called the First Tee program, which is a youth development program that introduces young people to the game. The second is the World Golf Hall of Fame, which opened in May of 1998 at the World Golf Village in St. Augustine, Florida. And then the third is Golf 2020, and that's an industry coalition that's designed to grow interest and participation in the game. So my role essentially is to bring the heads of the industry together to focus on the initiatives that we think give us the best chance to grow interest and participation in the game of golf.
We have some 1,200 courses here in the state, but we also have so many golfing industry organizations with headquarters here. What makes us in Florida such an ideal location for all of this?
Well, what happened in Florida is that all the major golf organizations clustered here. Just about everyone is in Florida in some form. And the reason that that happened is really twofold. One is because there's so much activity on the eastern seaboard, it made sense for the organizations to be east. But then secondly, when a few started to cluster here, the others joined suit because it just makes more sense to be close together because we work so collaboratively in so many ways. So that's how it happened historically.
So Florida is known as the golf capital of the world. How did we earn that title over so many other beautiful warm weather spots all over the place?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the policies of the state government, i.e. no state income tax, for instance. That had a lot to do with it. But then also the developments that sprung up all over the state. Today there are almost 1,200 golf courses in Florida. It's #1 nationally in terms of golf facilities, and I would dare say also #1 from the standpoint of gated communities too, which a lot of the retirees really found attractive. So there are a lot of things, I think also being on the East Coast and a lot of people coming out of the Northeast, that would make more sense to come to Florida than say Southern California or Arizona. So a lot of things came together to make that happen, but what it resulted in is by far and away the #1 state for golf in the nation.
Okay, so when you're talking about our golf courses, anything unique about our particular courses? I know we have alligators, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they're pretty demanding from the standpoint, Florida golf courses typically are going to have three things. They're going to have wind, they're going to have water, and they're going to have sand. And so
sand is bad in golf, isn't it?
Well, it is. It can be, not in all cases, but those three things make them pretty demanding. And so that actually made the golf courses more interesting because architects could do a lot with that. And so that was another reason why there was such great development here. But I think mostly it had to do with the fact that it was in the corridor that a lot of people were going to want to come to retire to.
Part of your role as CEO of the World Golf Foundation is to change perception that golf is a narrow, like a niche industry.
Right.
Why are people wrong in thinking that way?
Well, people do tend to view golf somewhat as, your word, a niche industry, but here are the facts about golf. It's essentially a $70 billion a year industry. It employs 2 million Americans. It's larger than the spectator sports and the performing arts industries combined. It generates almost $4 billion a year for charity, and almost all of the money that's raised inside of golf goes to causes outside of the game. And most of that charitable fundraising occurs at about 12,000 of the nation's almost 16,000 facilities. And so it very much has a very important role with respect to not only the economics of our country and job creation, but also the charity of our country. So it very much is a mainstream sport and a mainstream business, although I think because people tend to see it as a pastime, they tend to perceive the sport that way. But that couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, you talked about the $70 billion in revenue generated for the United States on a yearly basis.
Right.
What about some of the types of businesses and the sub-industries? Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are several sub-industries that support the sport. So first of all, you've got the equipment manufacturers. They have tended to cluster in Southern California, but that's a big part of the business. You have the management companies. Those are companies that manage about 10 to 12% of the nation's facilities. That's another big segment. The golf media companies are a third segment, including the Golf Channel, which is headquartered right here in Orlando, actually. Then you have all of the various associations and the tours that support the industry as well. So there's a lot of different elements that probably don't meet the eye of the average citizen, but that are important elements that are part of that infrastructure of the game.
Right. I think a lot of people, as you say, look at just the golf course and think it ends right there.
That's right.
Well, on a national level, though, how does golf compare with economic impact compared to other sports?
Well, if you look at golf, it is number one from economic impact if you compare it to all the other sports. Like I said, it's larger than the performing arts and the spectator sports industries combined. So it's substantially larger. Another fact that people find somewhat hard to believe but is true is that if you take the charitable contributions that are generated by the National Football League, Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, and National Hockey League and combine them, it wouldn't equal to what golf generates by itself.
I had no idea that it was that big of an industry with things. Now we talked a little bit about the national level. Here in Florida, the golf industry employs about 167,000 people with a $14 billion a year impact. Do you think Floridians are aware of how huge an economic driver this sport really is?
Probably not, for the same reasons that people aren't on a national level. They tend to view it as, again, a niche sport that's played by a certain segment of the population. About 10% of the people in the United States play golf, but a higher percentage actually watch the game and are identify themselves as fans of the game. But for the most part, people view it as, hey, that's some place that certain people go to play golf, drive by a country club community, don't really give it a second thought. But when you look at it collectively, it's substantial. And so I would just say that for people that really don't understand that, just to take a step back and understand that it is a big employer. A lot of people in the state make their livelihood from it. And on that point, I would say this: a lot of people perceive that the people who make their living from golf are the affluent few, if you will, the tour pros, the Tiger Woods, the Phil Mickelsons. Yeah, they make their living from golf. They do very well. But by and large, the majority of people who make their living from golf are people who are living paycheck to paycheck. They're working in the restaurant at that golf facility. They're working out on the golf course superintendent's crew, getting up early in the morning, tending to the greens and whatnot. They're hustling bags and driving carts around for the patrons when they come in. And those people are not getting rich, but yet they rely on the game for their living. So that's very important to keep in mind.
Steve, with the major tours, they bring multiple economic benefits. Can you talk a little bit about the scope of what they bring to a region?
Absolutely. I mean, they're significant in their scope. For instance, this year's U.S. Open in Philadelphia generated about $100 million in economic impact for the Philadelphia region. And again, that came in the form of impact on caterers and other positions that would be a little bit lower in the kind of chain of command, if you will. So it has a tremendous impact, not only economically, but also from the standpoint of the prestige it brings to an area as well. So it all combines to be very impactful on a local community.
A huge amount. What are some of the challenges for growing and maintaining even the industry here in the state of Florida?
Well, the challenges in the state are the same as they are nationwide and maybe even worldwide, and there are three. And that is the time it takes to play the game, the perceived difficulty of the game, and the perceived expense of the game. And the reason I use the word perceived before the last two is because if people get hooked on the game and they love it, like someone like I do, you find ways to get the money to play the game, and you find ways to spend the time on the game. So, so those are things that we have to overcome as a sport generally. So we have some programs now in place, one of which is called Get Golf Ready. That's a program that's designed to introduce adults to the game in a fast, fun, and affordable manner to get them golf ready, as the name implies. And then from the youth perspective, we have the First Tee program, which, as I said before, that's a youth development program that uses golf as a platform to teach life skills. And we've touched about 6 million young people since our launch in '97. And we have plans to touch another 10 million in the next 5 years. So those are the two principal avenues into the game. But our view is if we can get people into the game, teach them about the game, get them reasonably successful, then the game tends to kind of bite people, and they're hooked.
Then you have someone, and you could keep building on that.
That's
yes.
right.
Well, how about tourism for us? We have a built-in population. How much does tourism factor into the economic impact for the state and what golf brings?
Well, if you consider in Florida, there are about 75 million tourists that come through the state each year. The state spends somewhere in the order of about $65 million a year on tourism, so it's a substantial part of the economy, probably number one in the state, I'm guessing. But golf has a big part of that. Now, obviously, you have Disney down the road. I'm not going to get into a debate about that, but even there, golf's part of the package there, too. So with almost 1,200 courses, most of them are available to the public in some fashion. That's a big draw here. So we're working very closely with the state agencies. In fact, we go there once a year for Florida Golf Day, where we talk to the executives that lead the different agencies, and we talk to legislators, both in the Senate and the House, about these things that we're talking about today. But with respect to tourism, our message is use golf as a key ingredient to promote tourism in the state, because it's proven to bring people here. And the other thing about golfers, they spend money too. They'll rent cars, hotels, meals, the whole deal. So they're going to spend money at a much higher rate than maybe other tourists would.
So again, you have that ripple effect of how the cash disperses throughout the game and the industry with it. Another element with golfing is the influence on a community design and development. Talk a little bit about that aspect and the aesthetics that a golf course actually brings.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you look at it strictly from an economic standpoint, it's been proven that a home in a golf community will yield about 50% higher than the identical home not in a golf community. So that's one piece, just the value of the real estate. But the other piece, as you suggest, is the aesthetics that it creates for the homeowners, whether they live directly on a hole or on a lake adjoining a hole, whatever it might be. It creates a much more, shall I say, pleasant living experience, if you will. But the other piece too, to your point, is that it creates essentially a community asset, because golf courses, as I alluded to before, are used in a lot of cases to raise money for causes that are indigenous to that local community. So whether it could be the Cancer Society, it could be the Humane Society, whatever it is, but they're community-based causes. And the golf course helps to create and generate revenue for that, not to mention employ the people who live in that community as well. So we view golf courses as a community asset.
Well, golf is distinctive, I think, too, in the fact that you can be playing the game and also be social, networking. It's a business tool. You can't do that playing football or basketball. So do you think that that's a built-in competitive advantage for golf over other sports?
Absolutely.
Contributes to things?
No question about it. I told my two sons were basketball players, and I told them, it's great that you play basketball, and I love you for it, but you need to learn to play golf, because I've been in business now for 33 years. I've never gone to the first corporate basketball tournament. I've gone to hundreds of corporate golf tournaments. And I could play at age 55 in a 10 handicap fine in those things. So it's a tremendous tool from the standpoint of business people being able to play and interact. But then it's also used as an entertainment tool as well. That's the whole premise of the LPGA and PGA Tour events, is that the built-in hospitality that those sponsors essentially pay for, which is a big tool.
What about the recession? How has that impacted the golf industry? It sounds like you're pretty sound no matter what, but...
There's no question it's had impact. And just to give you some scale, our industry was a $76 billion a year industry in 2005, and now we're just slightly under 70, 68.8 to be exact. So there's been some impact there, although the impact has been solely on the real estate side and on the construction side. Actually, at an operational level, it's ticked up a little bit despite that recession.
So operational, do you mean like the merchandise aspect of it?
Yeah, I'm talking about at the facility
Okay.
level and everything that goes into that. So green fees, food and beverage spending, merchandise spending, et cetera. And some of that is manifested in higher fees, obviously. But at the facility level, it's continued to chunk along pretty well. Although we have had a shakeout of sorts with respect to more facilities closing than opening over the last 6 years, actually. But that's all part of kind of the supply and demand dynamics of a capitalistic society, which golf is part of. So my summary comment would be, we did take a hit with respect to the recession. It wasn't as pronounced as many other industries, and we're pretty resilient. We're coming out of it pretty well.
It'll be interesting to see how quickly it picks back up again. As you said, you didn't lose that terribly much. From an environmental sense, we have some really unique and sensitive issues in Florida. How is the golf industry working towards more sustainability?
Absolutely. Well, that's really the mantra of the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America and the United States Golf Association's green section, which is sustainability, sustainable courses, sustainable clubhouses, because it's all part of an integrated ecosystem. But with respect to the golf course itself, what we're doing now is we're paying a lot of attention to the siting of golf facilities, the design of facilities, the construction of facilities, and then, of course, the maintenance of them. And if you do all that right, you can have a sustainable facility. Have all 16,000 or so facilities in the United States been built that way? No. But I would say over the last, say, 10 to 15 years, just about all of them have been with that in mind. So, and the other thing I would mention is that the people who maintain the golf course superintendent, those are trained people. They go to college, they get 4-year degrees, they have continuing education, they have to go through certification programs. They're frankly better trained to apply pesticides that we as homeowners, when we spray our Roundup on Saturdays, they're more qualified than we are, yet we have access to some chemicals they don't, interestingly enough. So those are very qualified people out there taking care of a golf course.
You mentioned the First Tee program started about 16 years ago,
Right.
and it was for a youth program.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit more about that and what the impact has been as the years have gone by?
No question, the First Tee program has been one of golf's leading success stories, without question. And so it has evolved where it originally was launched to introduce young people to the game who otherwise wouldn't have a chance to be introduced to the game. So by its nature, it was very urban-centered and a lot of public-private partnerships. It's continued to do that, but since then it's evolved to where today it's open to all. And it's as I said, a youth development program using golf as a platform to teach life skills. And that's what distinguishes it. So it's not your garden variety junior program. It's teaching young people how to play golf, but it's also teaching them what we call the 9 core values: honesty, integrity, perseverance, sportsmanship, etc., that they will take into other parts of their life. And that's why we have such tremendous corporate support, because people see that we're helping to generate the next generation of citizens and leaders, not just golfers.
Steve, golf is rooted in tradition, and with the advent, though, of smartphones, HDTV, it has impacted the game. What do you see as the next innovation coming along that might change things a little bit again?
Well, there are a couple things out today that I think have some promise. The first is it's a entity called Top Golf, and essentially what it is, it's in a kind of a food and beverage environment. So you're getting served, you can eat there, you can drink there, but then you have in front of you basically a simulator where you can play a golf course. You can dial up, you can play Pebble Beach, you can play Pinehurst No. 2, you can play Whistling Straits. You dial it up, and you can actually play golf while you're engaging in your food and beverage activity.
That's amazing.
I think that has a lot of promise, I really do, because it addresses a lot of things, and one of which is we all live in a absolutely time-crunched society today. And there you're multitasking. You're going out to eat, you're having a cocktail, and you're getting your golf fix in. So that's pretty good there. That's one thing. The other thing is, again, addressing this issue. I think what you're going to see are, at the facility level, variations on the traditional. You have to play 18 holes. You have to go warm up for 30 minutes before. You have to have a drink or something to eat after. And then when you get done with that, that's a 6-hour experience. And very few people can afford to do that anymore. So I think what you're going to see, and we're already starting to see it, are these where you can just go in basically and buy a 2-hour experience. So if that's 9 holes, that's 9 holes. If it's whatever it is, it is. But I think you're going to see golf consumed that way going forward. The other thing with respect to technology is the apps on the cell phones and the smartphones, that they're already there. But I think the other thing you're going to see is a relaxation of the rules that previously disallowed cell phones and disallowed tablets. I think it's going to be wide open, and people are going to play golf just like they go to a football game or a basketball game. It's just another form of recreation. They have to have all their tools with them while they do that.
Steve, thank you so much. It's been very interesting, a whole array of things I've found out. Thank you so much.
It's been great to be here.
I've been talking with Steve Mona, CEO of the World Golf Foundation, about Florida's role as the golf capital of the world. Thank you for tuning in to Metro Center Outlook. Until next time, I'm Diane Trees.